Out of our closed session, we have a motion to approve the city manager contract and awarded it to Todd Uhas, is how you pronounce his last name. We took a roll call and it was approved 5-0. Todd will be joining us from Beaverton, Oregon, who is a transportation director up there for a number of years and has worked on a series of infrastructure projects in the Portland area as well as Beaverton itself. Has a lot of experience with infrastructure, financing, and managing a larger city, but we're excited for him to come and join us here. We do not have an official start date yet. We are looking at probably the first couple weeks of August though, and doing a transition with our current interim with Todd. The City Council anticipates having some open public sessions so that he can meet the community and get to know everyone. So we're happy to award that contract to Todd. All right, moving on. We have no special presentations tonight, so we'll move into public comment. This is the section of the agenda that is for comments on the consent agenda, which is our check registrar, or items that are not on the agenda. We'll give 3 minutes to each speaker who comes up and just ask that you give your name for the record. So is there any public comment on items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda?
Hello, my name is Nathaniel Woods, and I'm an applicant for cannabis cultivation here in Dunsmuir. And I would like to express some concerns that I have in regards to my cannabis application and the cannabis application process here at Dunsmuir. My first concern is the fact that I cannot finish the application process with the state until I receive full approval from the city. But at the same time, the city of Dunsmuir is asking for proof or evidence of a full, complete, and approved California cannabis business license issued by the state. So as you can see, I can't provide that information until I get full permission from the city. And one example of that is here on the application of business licenses and state of gross receipts that I received from the city, which is part of the application process. Without this, my application will not move forward. It's at a stalemate. And 3/4 of the way down, it says, if cannabis business California license type, attach California cannabis license numbers. Again, I won't be able to provide those numbers until I get full approval from the city to get approval from the state. So that's my first concern and first example of that. The second is, as a cannabis applicant, I can't complete the application process on both the state side and the local side until I have compliance with the Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and that's concerning wastewater discharge. And again, there are 2 reasons why the CEQA cannot move forward, and it's a stalemate and nothing's going to happen until it's either, the same thing with the previous issue, is either amended or removed, because they're requiring, in my case, a sample of wastewater runoff, and in my case that would be water runoff from the plants that I'm growing. But I cannot grow the plants until I'm issued a permit to do so, but I can't finish the CEQA applications, the wastewater discharge applications, which is required by the state and is also required by the city, until I'm allowed to, or permitted in some way to cultivate cannabis to provide this. So again, unless this is amended or removed in some way, my application will not move forward. And again, on May 8th, I received a unanimous approval from the Planning Commission for my conditional use permit for cannabis cultivation, pending several continuing elements to be completed, which are including me as an applicant to obtain and maintain the wastewater discharge permit, which is the CEQA form that I was just talking about. So again, I can't move forward until that happens, and also it's required by the city as part of my conditional use permit that the city staff, as well as the city engineer, the sheriff, and the fire chief come to do an inspection. The biggest issues with these inspections is no one really seems to know what's going on. I approached the city just yesterday and asked for some sort of checklist, some sort of compliance list. So when the sheriff does come, I don't waste his time. I am ready with my checklist. I have everything on there, no illegal activity.
Nathaniel, that's going to be time for tonight, but thank you. And
Madam
please
Mayor?
feel free to follow up. Is it a quick call?
I'd like to give him my 3 minutes that we're all entitled to as council. This man needs to be heard. What he has is valid.
Correct. What we can do is we can schedule this as an action item to give some more time and request to hear it, but tonight it's a general public comment, and I'm going to hold everyone to their 3 minutes.
Okay, well,
But I do encourage you to submit an email. You have been really good about submitting your concerns through email as well. That'll be easier for us to check off and check into to make sure we get all the details right. So I would appreciate
Nathaniel,
that.
as a council member, I see what you're going through, and I want to apologize to you for the slapping that you're getting. It ain't right. I'll look into it myself. I'm sure a couple of us are going to. I promise you, bro, okay? When you say they don't know what they're looking for, we got to figure that out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just to remind you that public comment is just giving a comment. If you have a clarifying question, that's all right. But we try not to do the dialogue and everything. I know. All right. Whenever you're ready.
Mario Rubino, let me get it out, 5512 Dunsmuir Avenue. Council, in 2010, Mr. Arth and me sat on council, and unfortunately we had to put through a bunch of rate hikes. It was recommended by phase 3 sewer, 3 in water. Obviously the citizens were in quite an uproar over such a issue. We created a task force and went through a process with them, and we made a bunch of agreements. One of the agreements is that we would set a sewer improvement fund. That sewer improvement fund was recommended by the health department. Mr. Arth had called in many professionals and quite a few people. That sewer improvement fund created, to date, $1.597 million. That improvement fund was through a series of promises that our council made that was clarified and recorded by Mr. Dunsmuir Avenue, I'll remember his name in a minute, Mr. Lee. Those agreements went through, we went through a series of city managers, much as was forgotten. This particular fund was promised not to be used for anything other than improvements, and because councils didn't know better, as this one recently didn't, they expended some of the monies to keep the O&M active. I brought this up with Mr. Arth last year. I brought this up with Councilman Douche and Keisler, and we stopped having the two accounts merged. The two accounts weren't set up as they should have been. The improvement fund should have been set up as a restricted fund. But because it's not restricted, it can be spent by council without cause. The point is that recently in front of council, the improvement fund was attacked again. When we had the sewer rate task force, and Mr. Deutsch and Mr. Kaiser sat on it with Mr. Art, we talked about keeping the improvement fund. That was a decision of the task force. And now we hear that PACE has recommended not to keep it and to combine them, which is silly because we spend it anyway. So the point is, when we did our 218, did we really create enough money to run the O&M and is it profitable? And why is there any possible need to attack the sewer fund more than we have in order to keep it solvent? We've broken faith with the citizens on a lot of issues. This is one of them.
Mario, that's time. If you have any closing statements, please make them.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, is there any other general public comment about items not on the agenda? Sure, if you want to give it to Julie, she can pass it around the table.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finish your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Stephen Bryan. I'm the director with the Dunsmuir Community Resource Center and regional director of South Siskiyou County with the Siskiyou Community Resource Collaborative. I'm here tonight to speak to the council and staff about the value and need for support to the Dunsmuir Community Resource Center. We work closely in and with the Dunsmuir High School, Dunsmuir Elementary School, with local families, children, and seniors. I hear the council speak of the need of law enforcement and code enforcement, and we agree. However, if you agree that these are your funding priorities, you should also be working on ways to fund prevention. To mitigate these needs, your local resource center is committed to strengthening communities and strengthening families, which equal long-term success in garnering more community involvement and building social connections, both of which reduce crime, child abuse and neglect, elder abuse and neglect, hunger, and despair. We are committed to increasing childhood literacy and education to further strengthen Dunsmuir, both of which Sheriff Lopi finds as priorities to decrease incarceration and crime. Prevention is the key and is at the heart of all that we do. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because I know most of you, but we are only funded to be open on average 3 days a week, but we still serve on average over 450 Dunsmuirians every month. This does not include all the travelers and others who pop in throughout the day with questions and concerns. I'm only speaking of the citizens who we actually directly help with resources and insurance, food, medical, education, parental classes. I shared with you 2 sheets. One is all the things that we do, which include child development activities with children and parents, kindergarten readiness programs, children ages 0 to 5, play groups, garden connection, children gardening classes, youth projects in the schools, girl circles, literacy promotion, parenting workshop, mental health, and stigma reduction activities. The list goes on and on. We support veterans, seniors. We do Thanksgiving food, turkey, ham, and chicken distribution. We do Christmas coat drives and distribution for children. The other sheet that I shared with you is from the Center of Study of Social Policies, which speaks to the 5 protective factors, which are at the heart of everything the Resource Center does: parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need, knowledge of parenting and child development, social and emotional competence of children. This is what the Resource Center focuses on. It increases strength in families, optimal child development, and reduced child abuse and neglect. Budgets are a statement of value, and I hope you see the value in your local community resource center. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments related to items that are not on the agenda or in reference to our consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll close the general public comment and move into council and staff comments. I'll start with staff. Do you have any comments for tonight? Right? Sergeant Weston?
I was going to report on the June statistics. It was a slower month with crime stats, but we had a total of 463 patrol hours, 146 total calls for service. We pulled 20 case numbers. It was 22 traffic-related stops, 9 citations. We had 6 arrests, one of which was a felony, 5 were misdemeanors. 3 of those were driving on a suspended license. Siskiyou Avenue, Shasta Avenue, Dunsmuir Avenue. 1 felony warrant arrest on Siskiyou Avenue. We arrested somebody for possession of drug paraphernalia on Shasta Avenue, and then we had a fighting in public arrest on Dunsmuir Avenue. No burglaries, 3 petty thefts, 3 assault batteries, 1 vandalism, 1 trespassing, and then 14 disorderly peace calls.
All right, are there any questions for staff or the sergeant today? Seeing none, we'll move to council member comments. I'll start with you, Councilmember Deutsch. Do you have any comments tonight?
No, I don't.
All right, Councilmember Bryan?
Do not have any comments.
Councilmember Keisler? Go for it.
First of all, as most of you know, I recently got married, and I want to thank council, everybody that had something to do with it. It was great. So, again, thank you. There's a couple of announcements at the Rotary. We have a new president. Her name's Wendy Groschel, and I'll be at the end of tonight asking if she can have a spot on the next agenda. She has wants to bring her new project to Dunsmuir, to council, to show us what her mission for this year's Rotary thing is. Like last year, Katie O'Grady, she did the little libraries. Well, Wendy's got a great idea this year for things that protect our rivers, and I'll let her make her presentation. Everybody, the farmer's market, if you noticed, is open. It's Thursdays, it's pretty cool. I cordially invite you to go check it out. They got some really cool stuff there. And then again, just to let everybody know, the Brew Fest is August 3rd. Come support the local brewers.
And they are looking for volunteers right now. And so if you are able to volunteer for that, please, there's applications on their webpage.
one more thing, I would like to commend Stephen Bryant and the Resource Center, because all this stuff that you got listed there, I personally know at least somebody on almost everyone that you have touched, especially the veterans. So kudos, keep it up.
And then I know you were making, yeah, thank you. During the public comment, you were addressing Nathaniel's comments. If you want to continue to do
If
that,
I might.
this time is the appropriate time to go.
Okay, council. We have somebody that, to me, has jumped through all the hoops, and they keep giving this gentleman more hoops. I'm appalled that when he says to me, well, the building inspector come and what are we supposed to look for? The fire department come and what are you supposed to look for? The police comes and what are they supposed to look for? They don't know what they're looking for. Somebody needs to establish some ground rules. The guy's got, everybody from the planning commission has approved and are wishing him success in his business. So, I'm asking us if we can do something here. What do we got to do? What do we got to, which direction can council help this guy? That's my question to us.
I would support putting it on a future agenda, just a staff update on some of these issues relating to applications.
Well, the complication, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, can you respond?
Yes.
The complication was nobody was working on this for a lengthy period of time. About 2 council meetings ago, you asked me to start working on it, at which time I found out that actually the city manager's office was assigned to do the work. So I apologize for not knowing that, but we have followed up with several agencies finding out how they process this. City staff is not aware of how to process these applications. They've never been processed in Dunsmuir before. In addition, what I found out is a couple staff people trying to help started off in the wrong direction, and we had to bring that back and fix those things. In the meantime, the city manager is working on other projects. We do have a visit. You mentioned the building inspector. The building inspector was asked to go down to this particular property and look at it, and found things that apparently were built without permits. So he is working with the property owner and the prospective business operator to fix that. So whatever process that takes, the building inspector will be involved in that, not anybody else on staff. And nobody on the council should be involved in that. We've assigned that to the building inspector. I mean, I don't know the building code, so I can't be involved. Everything else, we're trying to work on as we can.
The sequel?
As I have a comment, as it relates to state versus city requirements overlapping and being exclusive to one another, if you could look into, because I'm sure the company we've retained to process these applications understands the state local connection and how they interact. If you could look into that.
I heard that question, and I have no idea what that's about. I will look into that.
Thank you.
And I will also look at about the hazardous discharge permit that he has to have for the sewer. And that was a good question. I don't know how that works. I will call another city that obviously is processing things. How does somebody get their sewage tested if they're not creating any? So I assume at the moment that you just look at the chemicals and soils and things they say they're going to be using. The city engineer will look at that and decide that seems to be okay, and then later on actually do a test. But part of the process also is to make sure they put something in the way of all this leaving their facility where it can be tested. So I don't know that that's going to happen. And there are other things in the process that we haven't gotten to. And I'll make it a priority.
Appreciate it.
Just to make it easier, so the CEQA should be done. So when he went to planning commission, there should have been a CEQA section to his conditional use permit.
Well, he went to the planning commission, as he says, and got an automatic, or got unanimous approval for a conditional use permit.
Correct.
That did not give approval of the business permit that he's required to get as part of a different ordinance, not part of the planning process. It did not give approval for other things that he's bringing up.
But
I really don't know what, I'm sorry.
it had to have made a sequel plan.
That's what I'm trying to say is, if
I
it's,
don't know what the
Okay.
question is about CEQA. I have to ask.
I'll have a conversation, it's probably a lot easier than what you think it may be, so.
Neely?
But anyway, Councilmember Deutsch.
If I could say, I think that, first of all, we probably shouldn't be diving too deep into this because we're having a discussion on something that's not on the agenda, but at the same time, I think it would be fair to say, unless anyone here objects on my fellow council members, that we all want this to operate smoothly and want to work to make that happen. Are there any objections to that?
No.
I would just say if we could put it as an agenda item to have a report on the condition of it, because I'm just perturbed that council meeting after council meeting, new little issues come up in the process. And that's natural to being new, us having not done it before, but just to know where we're at, try to move forward as best
Right.
possible.
All right, are there any questions on the cannabis licensing process at this point, or any other comments? Councilmember Art.
So I'm just going to speak to the law enforcement inspection. This thing, there's been no direction from the state on what a law enforcement inspection is supposed to even look like or what we're supposed to be looking for that we are aware of. But I just wanted to say that the sheriff and I have been in communication about this just about every week, and he has been making some contacts and trying to figure out what inspection points are supposed to be. I mean, there's no form even out there that the state has supplied to give us, to give us some guidance on what we're supposed to be looking for. So at this point, it's my understanding the sheriff is trying to put together a list of stuff that we can present to the city to see if they're going to buy off on this. That meeting was scheduled to take place this week. If it's not this week, then hopefully next week. But just want to let you know that we are, as the sheriff's office, working on our end of things to try to come up with something that can be presented and something that we can go on so you guys know what we need to be looking for.
And I would summarize that to be part of staff's report, which is, this has been a moving target. I mean, we don't have a plan, as Peter is often saying, on how we're getting through this. We're making it up as we go along. So the second applicant will probably get a very smooth process. But unfortunately, what's been happening with the first applicant. And the state is not happening, or not helping. Everything he's mentioned about the state complications, we're not trained to deal with that. We tend to rely on our consultant, who doesn't know either. So when we get that kind of an answer, we're not sure how to proceed. I'll be working on this. I'll get you a much better report in 2 weeks.
Great, thank you. Councilmember.
Nathaniel, you're like Columbus, so you're setting the course. We're going to try to help it sail better. Columbus, new trail.
Great. Councilmember Art.
Well, first of all, you should understand, applicants are required to put up their own risk money to the city of Dunsmuir to obtain this application. So to the extent the staff of the city of Dunsmuir are wasting the applicants' dollars, I hope you provide an accounting to the applicants that assures them the missteps of the city of Dunsmuir were not on their dime. I tend to get my information in part from the Dunsmuir newspaper, and a half-page ad in yesterday's newspaper profiling 2 cannabis operations that are licensed and in operation, co-owned in the city of Weed and in the city of Mount Shasta. They figured out not only the licensure, but the tax rate, the collection approach. They're actually receiving dollars that the city of Dunsmuir is not receiving. I read one paragraph. Tabor is the equivalent to Matthew. Tabor has worked closely with the city of Weed and its agencies, Siskiyou County and state departments, to meet all criteria, including background checks and a live scan that is processed through all 3 law enforcement agencies. She attends city council meetings, makes contributions, and stays involved in the community, creating jobs for local people. Why can you not talk to the city counterparts, never mind the mayor in the city of Mount Shasta, and figure this out? I support not only an agenda item, but as we spend hours in finance committee trying to fairly estimate the cannabis revenue contribution to our general fund, we picked $15,000 arbitrarily. It was $1,000 in the staff budget. But if we continue to drag our feet, it'll be no dollars. The citizens of this community last November, by a vote of 70%, said tax and regulate. Why can't we get this done? You worry about a majority mandate, a two-thirds mandate. The citizens want this done. Shame on us.
All right, so we're going to be bringing that item back for a future agenda. Did you have any other comments tonight?
I do. I see that the agenda format has not yet changed.
It will be. I was working with Julie today actually to confirm and make sure that it is going to be perfect for the next one.
And I really urge that we have, all through the summer fire season, a regular report from the chair of our disaster recovery committee to tell us whether we're supporting each other or not. My specific question to the city manager through the chair is this. Everybody I know in Dunsmuir is hacking down limbs, pulling up weeds, getting rid of the berry vines. They have a huge amount of green waste to dispose of. Rather than having any meaningful conversation with Clements, we just renewed the contract for another year. No conversation about green waste removal. So I would like to hear whether it's city staff and trucks or Clements staff and truck, how hard would it be to have once a week curbside removal, and maybe it goes to the airport, because I understand green waste forever either went south to the disposal plant or north to the airport. But for seniors and for people that have income limitations, how are they supposed to get rid of their green waste? The city, as far as I can tell, is not. If I go to the website, I see nothing except a go to the disposal site, but that was months ago. There's nothing forward-looking at all as we get into the heart of the fire season.
Right, do you have any other comments for tonight? All right, seeing none, I do not have any particular comments myself tonight, so we will move on to item number 10, which is approval of the minutes for the June 18th, 2019 meeting. Is there any discussion on approval of the minutes?
I move we approve minutes.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Art?
Well, again, you know, in terms of follow-up, I do read the minutes, and the minutes contain motions and things that we commit to do. So, for instance,
So are you requesting an amendment of the minutes?
no, I'm trying to see when the minutes indicate we are going to do something, when we're going to do something.
So as far as having, so if it's really just the recording of what's going on is the minutes, but if there's something in there that you want to address as far as when we're going to get to something, we can talk about that at consideration of future agenda items and maybe give an update, but you can also ask during council comments in the future. All right, is there any discussion on the motion to approve the June 18th, 2019 minutes? Just really quick, Julie. Just really quick, is the top of the minutes just says June 20th instead of the 18th. Thank you. Right, just grammatical stuff. So there's a motion and a second. No other discussion. Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving the June 18th, 2019 minutes with a minor grammatical correction, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries, minutes are approved. We'll now move into consent agenda item
I'll make a
11.
motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second?
So on the consent agenda tonight, just for the public's information, we have one item, which is the check register for June 20th, 2019 through July 12th of 2019. There's a motion to approve consent agenda item A, and there's a second. So Councilmember Keisler first, Councilmember Archer second. Any discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving consent agenda item A, check register, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. We do not have any public hearings scheduled for tonight, so we will now move into old business, item 13A, which is consider and authorize the mayor to execute employment agreement with Todd Uhas for services as city manager.
That was reported in
And that was reported after the closed session, that the city council had a motion to approve the contract. I believe we do still need a motion to authorize me to sign it, or was that included?
We did that in,
Okay.
we all took a vote, the roll call voted, already been done. You report it when this item comes up.
You should have announced all you have to announce from closed session. So
Okay.
what you should announce as a part of considering this is the salary of the new city manager,
Sure.
which is $110,000 a year to start.
All right, let me just find that real quick.
Can I make a recommendation here?
Yeah.
If we could ask Randy just to kind of report out the points of the contract since he was involved in laying it out, how would you summarize it? 130 and or 110, what else?
I've been gone a while. It's a term contract. It begin on the date of approval by the city council, which is tonight. His pay will be $110,000 a year. It cannot be terminated without cause. With cause terminated, there's a provision. He can resign at any time, giving notice. You are being asked to do a performance evaluation of him periodically, starting in the first year, several times, and after that, at least annually. Vacation and sick leave are provided, provided for other employees, with the addition of some additional vacation and holidays, not holidays,
Personal days.
administratively, thank you, in the first year. Otherwise, we provide funds for his professional advancement, education and training, for attending league conferences. The city will pay for the bond for him to do his job. The city will defend him in all legal actions that might be brought against him in the course of doing his job as city manager. And that's pretty much it.
All right, are there any questions from the council? Seeing none, we don't need any action, it was just basically reporting.
The motion would be to authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
All right, okay, good, that's what I thought. So yeah, so we approved the contract and now we're approving that I sign it on our behalf. All right, no other questions, we'll open this up into public comment. We'll open this up now for public comment on the authorization for the mayor to execute the employment agreement with Todd Upass. Just really quick for those of you who are not here, Todd is from Beaverton, Oregon. He's a transportation director out there, and he has worked on a number of infrastructure projects in the Portland and Beaverton area, as well as working with a number of staff up there to complete those projects and jobs. His wife is now an instructor at Shasta College down in Reading. So he's been commuting back and forth between Beaverton, Oregon, and Reading for about a year now, but hopefully he should be calling this place home here pretty soon.
And it has acquired residence.
And he has acquired residency, so that's nice. All right, we'll open this up for public comment. Anybody? Seeing none, we'll move into council discussion and action. Is there any discussion and action, Councilmember Deutsch?
I would like to point out to the citizens that we went through a lengthy process. We had 8 applications. We broke it down to 5 that had the requisite qualifications. Down to that, we had telephone interviews, with the mayor and myself and the city manager from Wairega and the city manager from Mount Shasta. When we went through those telephone interviews, we narrowed it down to 3 people. One of the persons pulled out. We interviewed 2. And at the end of that, all 5 of us agreed wholeheartedly on the person that we selected, and we're excited to work with them. I think that would be a summation of the process we went through, and I'm looking forward to working with them along with the rest of the council.
All right, any other discussion or motion?
Are we looking for a motion? I make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute employment agreement with Todd Upass as the city manager of Dunsmuir.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Keisler, second by Councilmember Deutsch. Is there any discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor?
Roll call. Do a roll call.
Okay, we'll do a roll call. It's not legal. All right, we'll move into a roll call vote. All those in favor of authorizing the mayor to execute the employment agreement with Todd Upass for services as city manager for the city of Dunsmuir. Councilmember Deutsch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Bryan?
Aye.
Councilmember Keisler?
Aye.
Councilmember Arth?
Aye.
And myself is an aye. Motion carries 5-0. There is no other old business on our docket, so we'll now move into new business. So number 14A, which is the appointment of citizen members to the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee has 2 open positions for citizen members, and there are 3 applications, and you have those applications in your packets. The 3 citizen members are in the audience today for questions of the council. And
Yeah, so the addition of that report, the city manager, Randy, and myself met with all 3 applicants to discuss their qualifications. All of them have experience, some more than others, especially related to government. And we give them the opportunity to learn more about the Finance Committee and its role currently in the future with the city financial policies and preparation of the budget. So we had that interaction, and all were found to be qualified for basic requirements.
All right. Do you want, how would you like to proceed? Would you like each one of the applicants to come up and introduce themselves?
What the city council has done in the past is either had all 3 at the same time or had them come up one at a time, let them ask questions, then ask questions, then have them be seated, and then after interviewing all 3, a nomination process will go on. All nominations must be public, out loud. All votes must be not secret ballot.
Okay.
I do have a point of order question here related to all committee appointments. The way it's worded in the protocol is the mayor shall appoint with the approval of the city council. Is this the process we're accepting as that? And we did that in the past.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think as far as procedural, I think we'll just have each one come up one at a time and introduce themselves. And if the council would like to ask any questions based off of their information presented starting on page 17, we'll do that. So,
Question, before we start, how many openings are there?
2 and 3 applications. So Len Foreman, if you want to come up first. As I said before, just a brief introduction and maybe why you'd like to serve on the Finance Committee.
I'm Len Foreman, been a resident of Dunsmuir since 2004. I was the superintendent principal at the high school for 10 years, and then at the end of that tenure, I finished my educational career at Durham Unified as superintendent there. I've had a lot of experience, 15 years worth of experience developing budgets, overseeing them, dealing with questions that the community has about why governing boards make decisions that they make. I applied because I am vested in Dunsmuir, consider it my home. I love the town and would like to help it move forward in the future.
All right, thank you. Council members, are there any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Leslie Wild, if you want to come up.
I'm Leslie Wild, I live in Dunsmuir. I was on the Finance Committee several years ago. I have an interest in the city finances and the city business. I've attended several Finance Committee meetings over the years, some held in the kitchen, some held in this room. I'm cynical. I think no matter what I say, people will either vote for me or against me. But I would be honored to be honest with you.
All right, any questions before Leslie sits down? Seeing none. We'll go to Mike Delvano.
Hi, I'm Mike Delvano. I've been here 6 years in Dunsmuir. Recently moved out of Mount Shasta down here. Prior to that, I spent a considerable amount of time in Alaska. I was our food operations vice president there. I was actually involved with getting food, which is not a very, it's actually a hard commodity to get it out of the Seattle area to each one of the different villages. Very difficult. We created budgets, we created financing, we created this whole array of paperwork to be able to do this, because getting things out of Seattle, it's very difficult because for a typical store, you'll have freight coming in the back door, you'll have freight that's on the water in a barge, and you have freight at the distribution center in Seattle. You have to be extremely organized. So creating a paper trail of such with budgeting, with financing, what can we spend this week, what can we spend, it's very difficult. So I was actually there from the 80s to be able to do that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Just, you have an A in accounting, correct?
Yes. Quite a few years ago. I think we're talking 40 years ago. I'm retired.
Mike, how long have you been in Dunsmuir?
I've been here almost 6 years now. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mike. All right, so any other questions before we open for general public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll open this up to general public comment. If anyone from the public would like to make a comment on the appointment of citizen members to the Finance Committee, this is your time. Seeing no general public comment, we'll move into discussion. Who would like to start? Councilmember Bryan, would you like to start since you've had a little bit more time discussing with the three applicants?
Yes, I think that all of them care deeply to be involved, and all have, at one point or another in their career, dealt with similar financial issues and budgetary issues as the city of Dunsmuir deals with. In terms of who would perhaps provide the greatest insight, I'm very eager to have someone who spends so much time in governmental finance, because it's rare to have someone step up in that capacity.
Councilmember Arth.
Well, fellow council members and public, I drafted the resolution that we all adopted to create the Finance Committee. There's nothing magic about the number 2. And I count as friends all 3 of the candidates. I know them well, and I would wonder if there's a second for simply amending the resolution to state 3 public members rather than 2, and accepting all 3.
So unfortunately, that's not the matter at hand tonight. We would have to schedule that as an action item to review that resolution. My understanding is that the total membership number is 5.
The total is 5, and my opinion on it would be to, while I do find all 3 to both be willing and able to assist in the Finance Committee's work, that we should keep it to 5 until we've established how it works with the larger numbers. And moving forward from there, I'd love more people, if there's that many people interested and capable of staying involved, I could see expanding in the future. But my opinion would be to start with 5, develop good working relationships with all of our counterparts from the other committees and city council and staff first, and then consider expansion.
Right. Is there any discussion or is there a motion, nomination at this time?
I move we select Mr. Delapano and Mr. Foreman.
Right, there's a nomination for Mr. Delvano and Mr. Foreman. Is there, I believe there needs to be a second to the nominations, correct? So is there a second?
I'll second it, but I don't want to start a war with Leslie, and I think there could be room for 3.
So again, that's not the issue.
I understand that, but I just need to voice my opinion on that.
All right, so there's a motion by Councilmember Deutsch, second by Councilmember Keisler. Is there a discussion on the motion at hand?
Is this the time to entertain alternate nominations, or we open this up for that?
If you want to make an alternative nomination, you can. It would be a motion and a motion, and someone would have to second, but go for it.
It would be citizen Foreman and citizen Wild.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Arth for Mr. Foreman. And do you prefer Miss or Mrs. Wild or Leslie?
Leslie Wild.
Leslie Wild?
Leslie Truly Wild.
Okay. So Mr. Foreman and Leslie Wild for that. Is there a second to that motion? Seeing none, there's no second, motion fails. We're back to the original motion, which is the nomination of Mr. Foreman and Mr. Delabano. Any other discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, we will move into a vote. All those in favor of nominating Mr. Foreman and Mr. Delabano to the Finance Committee for, I believe, a term of 2 years.
It's 2 years, but alternating. One would be up for reappointment in 1 year, one would be up for reappointment in 2 years.
Okay, we'll make a motion on who's what next for that. So all those in favor of nominating Mr. Foreman and Mr. Delavana to the Finance Committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. It was 4 in approval, 1 against. So we'll move on to who will be serving the 1-year term.
If you could, real quick, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to thank the 3 applicants for applying and their interest in helping the city.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so now we'll entertain a motion for who would like to serve as a 1-year term and who would like to serve as a 2-year. If it's okay, I'd just like to ask, does it matter to either of you if it's a 1-year or 2-year appointment?
It does not matter to me.
Congratulations. You can have a 2-year term.
He made it easy.
All right. Would the council like to entertain the motion of Mr. Delavana holding the 1-year term and Mr. Foreman holding the 2-year term?
I so move.
All right.
Second.
All right, so there's a motion for Mr. Foreman serving in the 2-year term and a motion for Delavana serving in the 1-year term. Any discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of Mr. Foreman serving for a 2-year term and Mr. Delavana serving for a 1-year term, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
Welcome to the party.
Thank you.
Welcome, congratulations, and thank you.
All right, we will now move on to our final piece of new business, which is the update on cannabis fingerprinting.
Great, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I touched on it at the last meeting and very quickly, I just received the email, so I just kind of mentioned it in passing, but to make it official now, we do have the DOJ access to the fingerprinting results. So we can get results of whatever live scan fingerprinting we have, but we are still waiting on the code, which will be specific to the cannabis operations. So when we ask people to get fingerprinted, we do that under a certain code that the DOJ uses, and so that code is what we're waiting on. It's newly founded.
How does that affect life here in this process?
Great question. Means we cannot process anything as of right now. We don't have a code to process anything.
How can the other cities do it?
So to speak on the matter for Mount Shasta, we had to go through the same process. Unfortunately, prior to legalization, we were processing our cannabis individuals under massage parlor codes, which is technically not how you're supposed to do that. And ended up having to file for the same thing that Dunsmuir is filing for. I believe it took us about 7 to 9 months to get through the whole system. It sounds like it's a much shorter process now for the new system, but it still could be a little bit of time. And so the city of Mount Shasta chose to waive the live scan requirement until the code was obtained.
It seems like on the agenda should be action items, including provisional licensure and at least a time schedule. These applicants are going to run out of money and we will have no applicants.
And we have requested that for the next council meeting.
So what did you waive?
So we waived the live scan requirement until we got the code in Mount Shasta because they have to get a live scan for the state side.
Would that be applicable in this situation?
Of course,
We could do that.
directly.
We could.
They'll still be processed through a live scan before.
By the
they
state.
get to the state. So
Correct.
if that's the only thing standing in our way, I wouldn't mind moving.
So again, we're
That's
only
what
in,
I'm saying.
so again, we're only in clarifying questions and information at this point. We haven't opened up for public comment yet. So do you have a time estimation on when you should be receiving that code?
I don't. I did mark that it was March 21st when we did submit that. It was in a resolution, so you guys already signed that, and it's gone off, and I don't have an update on the timeline of when we're going to receive it.
Okay.
I think they said it was like 3 months or something.
What's what?
It was a few
3
months.
months.
3 months?
So we
It should be soon.
could be soon, but I don't know for sure.
March, April, May,
3 months
June, or
from
July?
March. 3 months from March. 3 months from March.
March, April, May, June, or in July?
At the very least, could we get that element of the expected timeframe in the report?
And when I say time frame, I mean to the point of collecting taxes.
So again, we're just asking questions on the item at hand. We've already scheduled a future agenda item to talk about the other factors, but just tonight is the fingerprinting portion. So I'm not hearing any other clarifying questions on the fingerprinting portion and the DOJ requirements. So I will open this up for public comment. Feel free to come up if you'd like.
I just want to say as an applicant, I have absolutely no problem taking the live scan and print and getting my background checked. This is no way me trying to get out of doing that. And so if it was amended in some way to, as soon as the code was available, to come and take the live scan, I would be very open to that. Thank you.
All right, are there any other public comments related to the cannabis fingerprinting item?
I would just want to say, and I'm sure you would,
Just because people do watch and they can't hear.
I'd like to see those numbers. I would just like to say, and I think you would, it would just be a preference until the city of Dunsmuir is able to do it. So it would just be law until the city gets its code.
Right.
You understand?
Yep. Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move into discussion. So like I said, what happened in Mount Shasta is very similar. It took a number of months to get our code. And so we just waived the requirement until the code was obtained. And then once the code was obtained, we just emailed all of the license holders and basically gave them 2 weeks to come in and do all the live scanning. And then we got their codes later. Yeah, but I think we ended up waiting about 9 months.
Can a motion be made to waive that right now?
Yep, this is an action item.
I make a motion that we waive that thing until we get the code that we need.
I second it.
All right, there's a motion to waive the fingerprinting requirement until we receive the Department of Justice live scan code.
I'm going to recuse myself because if anyone doesn't know yet, Nathaniel and his LLC is a tenant of mine.
All right, we'll wait a couple minutes and give you a head start.
I ask you to amend your vote to include direct staff
Yes.
to do that.
Okay, I'll move to, the motion has been amended to move
To
to
direct
direct
staff
staff.
to not enforce that one provision of the code for live scan fingerprinting and instead substitute whatever the other one was.
Very well said, Dave.
So yeah, so just to,
There you go, see, I'm good at words.
So the live scan is required for a state license. So theoretically, if the applicant or any future applicants would be applying for their state license and then the state denies them for not passing the live scan, we could assume they're not going to pass ours. So we would just take away our local.
And this direction is only active until
State
Code.
So second, we have to go.
Okay, so the motion is,
Motion to direct staff to waive the municipal code requirement of live scan until the code is acquired. And there's a second, so Councilmember Kessler first, Councilmember Bryan second. Is there a discussion on the motion?
no,
Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of moving to direct staff to waive the live scan municipal code requirement until the code is acquired, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, Mr. Arth. And motion carries.
that's a reclusion.
Just as a point of clarification, that live scan is required for anybody who has 20% or greater interest in the businesses. So for this one business, not that much of a complication. For the other business, there's 3 or 4 people involved, so that's
Okay,
easy for them to.
okay,
Just wanted to
Correct.
clarify that.
that's fine, that's fine.
Yes. So we've clarified that. We'll move on to item number 15, which is consideration of future agenda items. And just to review the list that I have at this moment, is that Councilmember Kleisler would like to have a special presentation at the next council meeting for the Rotary special projects.
Yes, ma'am.
All right? Do you want that, is there action that the council needs to take on that, or is it just a presentation?
We're looking for approval and the blessings.
Okay,
And
so,
it's nothing, it's simple.
okay,
It's mom and apple pie.
Yeah, mom and apple pie, it's gonna be a great thing,
okay.
great thing.
So we'll schedule it as a special presentation and a new business item to take action on.
There wouldn't be any action.
Yeah, there's no action.
Oh, there's no, oh,
We're just seeking
oh,
approval.
okay, okay.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
just want you to feel good and they will go forth knowing that they are doing God's work.
Okay,
Rotary Awards.
so we'll schedule a special presentation for Rotary, and then we have a unanimous approval by the full council to include an update on the cannabis licensing process, and what the other requirements we're missing are, and then timeline for how staff is completing those. Sorry, I'm trying to get that through. Are there any other consideration of future agenda items at this time that you didn't hear about, Councilmember Art?
So we're back to our minutes from the last meeting, agenda page 9. Old business in the meetings. 13A, approved procedure for processing of community promotion funding requests. Ryan stated that the amount of money varies from year to year. There's no guarantee of funding. The finance committee reviews the applications and returns the applications to the city council for a decision. I Sam Johnson reported the process is shown. I don't know what that means. The finance committee meets with applicants, then makes a recommendation to the city council. The council will meet with the applicants again and make a decision. I know we have no criteria whatsoever for our decisions, but the question is, the library board is generally concerned. Are they going to have money for a librarian or not? The pool has cracks. The resource center is asking for support. When and how, and when does this go back into the budget?
My understanding is we've approved the documents that you'll be using for applications, and that you were just waiting to get a quorum for finance committee to start.
Yeah, we were waiting for the
That
citizen
process.
members to be on board. Thankfully, we were here, and we'll be scheduling a finance committee in the near future.
So then you will hear I believe you're going to do a workshop with the applications, or at least try and do some outreach to help people fill those out for the first time. I couldn't remember what the whole.
We haven't quite developed that yet. We would like to do it in 2 parts, but given the time constraints that people are experiencing with their budgets, we might speed it along.
You've got some geniuses now.
So I believe
You like
that the application information is out there. I'm not quite sure if staff's sent that out.
We have all the applications.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
So then they're just waiting for finance to meet?
Many of the organizations have refilled out the applications.
Just out of curiosity, is there a number of money? All applications total how
Oh,
much?
yeah, we've got
Yeah.
$90,000? How much money have we got dispersed?
We're in deficit
Negative 23.
for operation.
Negative
The
23.
TUD fund is $102,000.
That's not connected in any legal way to.
The community thinks it is.
So again, my understanding is we've approved the process, and it's now in the finance committee, and it follows the process of the finance committee will hear all of those applications and then make a recommendation to council.
And I'm urging the chair, we need to notify the groups, we need to have a process, we need to get our public members.
First, we need to set a date where all new members of the finance committee can meet. I plan on having that and consideration of TUT increase and time frame for that on the agenda for the next finance committee meeting, which
I think we got,
scheduling allows, hopefully be in the second week of August.
So again, it sounds like that's pretty much in commit, that item is in committee already. So is there consideration of any other future agenda items?
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's really for the agenda, but I noticed that something may be going wrong with our police sergeant over there. Something is growing underneath his nose over there.
oh, I thought it was just dirt.
We may have to have a special agenda item just for that. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Art, you had another item.
The second item is related somewhat to the first. Madam Mayor, agenda page 11 of the minutes, you made a motion to direct staff to prepare a preliminary report on estimated costs for a ballot measure in a general election in 2020 to increase the sales tax rate, including anticipated revenues and increases of 1/4, 1/2, and 1.
So that's part of what's at the finance committee now. So that report's been done, and I believe that's going on the next finance committee meeting, which Councilmember Bryan just said.
Did we receive that?
So we look at yours.
You're gonna, yeah.
It'll be considered by the finance committee, and we'll recommend a path for going forward, mostly a timeline that we're looking to do now.
And the appreciation is the same. We're in a budget cycle, and whether it's cannabis revenue or
got most of it for tonight.
I mean, again, I would like to hear at the next meeting about, are there any green waste removal options?
So that is on the list for a future agenda item. My anticipation was once we had Todd hired and the contract signed to contact him about starting discussions with Clemens. Clemens has already agreed to sit down with us to talk about the cost estimates of what that would be, resulting in a 218 process to provide certain services, and then doing some public input related to it. So there's going to be a couple of meetings to see how we want to present that to council as far as if we need an ad hoc, or if that's something that we're just going to charge the city manager with, so that's coming up.
But summer will be over. I mean, I really think Randy, he knows Clemens, he knows the city public works staff. Why do we have to wait?
Madam Mayor, if I could. When this was going before the Solid Waste Committee back when it was alive, the whole idea there was that we were going to schedule 2 different times where we had a dumpster, the major dumpster, it used to be out there, moving it there. The same thing is still there if we come up with the money, but the money, it costs money. And that's basically what it would be. And secondly, I would say this is an item that falls under Public Works, the Public Works Committee, right? I mean, this is solid waste. So I would say if we want to follow it up, run it through Public Works Committee, come up with a number of what it would cost. We get that done, that's all it really takes. And the money part.
Interim city manager.
What I thought I was hearing a little while ago was that just a request to like almost immediately set up a program where people could take their green waste. I can negotiate that with the trash hauler anytime you want. So if you want to have a day where people can bring it to a particular site, city site, and then we'll dispose of it, there will be some cost that will come out of that fund.
That's what
We would love to do
That's
that
what
before
you're
we get any
asking.
farther in fire season.
If if 3 members of the council or more are asking for that, and you want to direct me to do that, please do so.
I believe there's a request for a future agenda item to discuss what the options are and the cost.
So I'm going to move it up to the next one and then we'll get it done.
Right. So we can't take action tonight and tell Randy to do that until we have a couple of options. So I think as a future agenda item, we would like a report on how to do that.
An additional agenda item, recently there's been talk about the parking lot on Sacramento, and my question is, does the council really want me to pursue that? And the reason I'm asking is because I found the file where we pursued it before, so it's very easy for me to do that.
I believe that we referred the off-street parking to Planning Commission first, so I think I'd like to see what they're going to come up with and see what we're going to need before we move into that.
Are we still talking acquisition?
It depends on if they change any of the parking regulations, which we referred to planning, I believe, last meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Just quick history. In 2016, we made a run at the one lot. And what happened when the gentleman from Union Pacific came out to look at that, he noticed that the city had just appropriated some of their property for parking lot on Sacramento previously. So he left a little irritated, came back requiring the city then pay more to lease property that we usurped. So that was kind of the end of the conversation about the other parking lot. But it's been 2 years. So if you want to pursue that, and Bryce Craig at the time wanted to move the fountain back over to where it originally was, so it would be part of the railroad view, if you will. And that was how that was going. And it just stopped for not the right reasons.
So I think right now, we've got an item at Planning Commission regarding parking, so maybe wait until that is finished up.
Comes back?
And then we'll talk about other options
Yeah.
for that, before we get ahead of ourselves. Is there any other future agenda item? I think we covered everything. Councilmember Art.
The final item is the cluster of financial issues around the airport, not the airport. And when you look at our working budget, it's pretty much the staff budget with a number of issues listed below that are characterized as policy issues. But the policy issues deeply affect our budget. Are we going to spend general fund dollars in the new fiscal year on Mont Airport? If so, how many? Do we have any plan whatsoever to move Mott Airport to profitability? If so, what is it and when do we get it?
So we had agreed at the last airport workshop that we will have another one to discuss the financing portion. And then Councilmember Deutsch and I will get together about arranging that. So,
Well, we want to know. Okay.
any other future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move to adjournment. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention,